Hello, and welcome to this bonus episode of the Little Sparks podcast. This episode is a follow up to our previous episode on being sinned against. I wanted to add a note to that on the topic of emotional abuse. At some point during my time in music school, I won't say when, but it happened at one point, I experienced significant and painful emotional abuse from a colleague. Aside from that fact, I am not going to be sharing exactly what happened. There is a lot about that story that I just feel would not be prudent to share for a few different important, legitimate reasons. But after we published our episode last week on being sinned against, particularly when it comes to sexual harassment or assault, I just felt that it's important to add a note on emotional abuse as well, as this can happen just or even more frequently within the field of music. I know for myself that I'm still suffering from the effects of the emotional abuse today that I experienced, in spite of being removed from it by a significant amount of time at this point. But I wanted to share a few things with you, a few thoughts on this topic, as well as some words of encouragement as well. So the first thing I wanted to share is, emotional abuse can be more difficult to name than, say, physical or sexual abuse. And this is because, tactics like manipulation or gaslighting are often at play, which can it can make it really easy to second guess yourself as to whether or not abuse is actually at play. So if you suspect that maybe you might be the target of emotional abuse, and you haven't shared it with anybody at all, I would just really encourage you to talk with someone. Ideally, this would, be like a trusted therapist or counselor or spiritual director. But if you don't have access to any of those kinds of resources, it's still better to share with a trusted friend or a family member than, say to keep it to yourself. Be prudent in what you share with, or in who you share with. But please don't keep this to yourself. Please don't keep it, yourself in the darkness by silencing yourself. I know for me, when I started to actually share what was going on in this situation that I was in, it was other people who actually gave me the words emotional abuse. And it opened my eyes to for the first time as to how seriously this person's behavior towards me had affected me, really. And it allowed me to name what was going on and be able to start a very long, slow-going journey of moving forward and healing from there. The second thing I want to share is just a reminder, maybe, but to remember this, that other people's baggage does not give them license to treat others poorly. Like, for instance, mental health diagnoses are real and legitimate, but they don't give anyone the right to engage in poor behavior towards others, including emotionally abusive tactics. I've had a few friends over the years who have had diagnosed anxiety disorders, and there's a striking parallel between the behaviors of those who use their anxiety as an excuse to hide behind repeated disrespectful, dishonest, or otherwise hurtful behavior, and those who have chosen instead to seek out living virtuous lives, treating people with kindness in spite of their own struggles, even when their anxiety can present like this extra obstacle to choosing virtue. And that's just an example. But mental health diagnoses don't give anyone an excuse to treat others poorly. Deep wounds don't give anyone the excuse to treat others poorly. Painful pasts also don't give anyone that excuse either. There is never a good reason to hurt another person. And of course, we're all broken a bit, and we are all inevitably going to hurt others. But there's a difference between repeated hurtful behavior, and doing something once and acknowledging it and apologizing and, making acts of reparation in the relationship. There is a major difference between the two. So what I'm talking about really here is that those repeated behaviors, especially when someone is called on it and they don't make any strides towards change or any signs that they want to change that behavior, actions always speak louder than words. Remember that. To continue on, emotional abuse, like any abuse, has a real effect on your life. I know, speaking from my own experience in my own life, I have seen a negative effect on my ability to make friends and maintain existing friendships because of what I experienced. I've also struggled deeply in my own spiritual life since this happened to me. And it's because the person who inflicted this abuse on my heart essentially weaponized the faith that I hold so dear and used it against me. Whether they realize it or not is an entirely different question. I just know that this is what happened. And in these areas of my life, I am still in active recovery. I won't lie. The recovery process is agonizingly slow going sometimes. And it's painful to see where emotional abuse affects your life. But it's so important to recognize and name these places, because healing can only begin when this happens. And that's hard. That's really hard. And sometimes it can seem like you've maybe finally moved on and then have uncovered, a deeper layer to the hurt. And it feels like you're going backwards in your healing. There's that phrase out there, the healing isn't linear, and it is true. Healing is not a linear journey. But no matter what, I really encourage you to invite Jesus into this process of healing as much as you are able to. He's the divine physician, and he desires nothing more than your healing. And I say this from a few different places. I say this from a place of faith. I say this from a place of remembering what the Lord has done for me in the past. And I also say this from a place of wondering when the healing that I so desperately need will occur. I am not out of the woods yet, but I have faith that Jesus is who he says he is. And I know that he wants your healing just as much as he wants mine. And what that healing looks like is utterly unknown to you or to me. And it will inevitably be different for you and for me, because we are different people. We have different relationships with God, and we have different hurts, and we have different wounds and different lives. But Jesus is the divine physician, and he does indeed desire healing for us. Everything we said in last week's episode about forgiveness and reconciliation also apply to emotional abuse as well. We are called to forgive, and we are called to reconcile when possible, but reconciliation is just not always possible. Forgiveness helps us to move on, and it gives us freedom. And this is a good gift from God. This command to forgive others is a gift from God. It is for us to heal and move on. Reconciliation, on the other hand, is not wise when the person on the other end has shown little to no inclination to change the behavior. Remember, actions speak louder than words. If someone has shown a pattern of engaging in emotionally abusive behavior towards you, please do not be afraid to put as much distance as you can between yourself and that person. It likely will take some courage, but you are deserving of respect because you're made in God's image and likeness, and you have a dignity beyond belief. You were made for more. You were made for so much more. And another thing I want to say, and this is more aimed at people who haven't experienced emotional abuse, if you suspect that emotional abuse is occurring to someone you know, please say something to that person. It might be awkward, but that person might need you, even just asking if everything is okay. In my own case, I was approached by a mutual colleague after I'd severed the relationship with the person who emotionally abused me. And this colleague shared with me that they suspected something was wrong for quite some time. Um, Even I had no idea, but they had even witnessed a very clear-cut incident in which this person was lashing out at me. And I was so grateful to be seen in that moment. But I really wish that this mutual colleague would have said something even just a few months prior, because I think that it would have given me really the courage to set some hard boundaries right there and then, instead of making some choices that ended up leading to additional hurt. So please, if you are seeing something that seems off in a relationship between two people, um, just please say something. Again, it might be awkward, but it's worth it if you suspect something is going on in terms of emotional abuse. There is a lot more I could say on this. One thing I will say as well is, if you are able to, therapy or counseling might be really, really good. I know that sometimes there are financial difficulties or just difficulties finding a therapist that clicks with you. Or it can even seem like, when you pursue this option, doors might be shutting left and right to you being able to pursue that. But if you are able to, please find someone like a therapist or a counselor who can help you walk through this and help you to navigate the the aftermath of emotional abuse in your own heart, or even help you walk away from it if you haven't walked away from it yet. As I said before, God is the divine physician, but a lot of times He wants to use others to help bring about healing as well. I mean, think of, like a medical doctor. The Lord can really, really bring about some beautiful healing through the gifts of medicine when it's practiced well. But the same can happen with mental health professionals as well. So don't shut the door on that if that seems intimidating to you. And I'll end with this. Emotional abuse is a tricky subject to navigate, especially in the professional world of music. It's hard enough to navigate sexual or physical abuse in the field of music, even when clear-cut evidence abounds. And it's even harder when the abuse is of an emotional nature, I think, because, sometimes those who engage in emotional abuse have others wrapped under their ability to manipulate, and it can feel like everyone is against you. But you were made for more than to experience the pain of emotional abuse. Please explore your options and talk to a safe, trusted person about what you're going through. You deserve so much more. And lastly, remember that Jesus is always with you. He hurts when you hurt, and that includes experiencing emotional abuse. He's walking beside you through all that you go through, and he will help you leave this darkness too. And just know that I am praying for you. And God bless.